Hey friends, this is Mark Suroviec, host of the Workplace Solutions podcast, inviting you to discover the joy of work. All right, we're good.
All right.
What's up, Jonathan?
Not much, man.
How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. It's the 5th of November.
Fantastic.
As V for Vendetta would say.
Remember.
There you go.
I love that movie. It's so much.
It's so good.
So much. I am here on the Workplace Solutions podcast today. This is Mark Suroviec, and I'm with my special guest, Jonathan, the Game Weaver. I was going to call him Game Lord, but he told me that that is not the right name for him.
Don't quite have the status of Lord yet. And Weaver happens just to already be a part of my name. So I guess it's just easy.
There you go. All right. So, Jonathan, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Yeah. What do you do for a living? Because we're going to talk a lot about your hobby in a little bit. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a college ministry team leader. And I am working with college ministry students at Berry College. I actually live in the guys' dorm and get to hang out with them on a life-on-life basis, as well as help them mature into Christ followers while they're in their college years. It's a really exciting time. One of the biggest areas of growth, for sure, for most people, outside of that 0 to 4 years where you learn to do all the basic human things.
Fantastic. So, Jonathan, will you introduce our topic today? Or just tell us what is our topic and our 3 questions.
Yeah, transferable skills, I think, is the topic for today. The questions, I'm pretty sure...
Do you need...
I was going to say, I might need to look at them. What are transferable skills? That would be good definition. How has your hobbies made you a better worker or leader? And then what advice would you give to other creatives are the 3 questions about transferable skills.
Fantastic. So I kind of threw a fastball on them, didn't
Yeah, I have no script in front of me, everyone, just in case you didn't know. This is called Off the Cuff.
There we go. All right. So as we love to do, we're going to have an icebreaker question.
Oh, boy.
And I know that you love games, board games, every type of game. So I know better than to ask, what is your favorite game? Because
Smart
that's...
man.
We don't have 9 hours.
Yeah, I don't have a favorite child, therefore I don't have a favorite game.
So instead, I'll say, what game has a memory for you that just kind of pops to mind? Like, I was playing this game and I remember X.
That is good. That is actually a very good question. Back when I was in late middle school, early high school, I played Lord of the Rings Trilogy Edition Risk.
Ooh.
And I had played normal Risk, as in the one that's on our world, but Middle Earth map with my music minister and the senior guy. We played for 8 hours some days on like a weekend. And it was an amazing time for me because I'm the youngest one by a lot. But I'm getting to hang with people who are much older than me doing something that's very, quote unquote, childish, right? Like it's like playing a board game, especially for 8 hours. You really feel like, man, what are we doing? You know, like, and so it's like, you guys have jobs in life, right? But
I'm laughing because that's not a sound effect. There's definitely a siren driving down the street.
Yeah, that is the bummer of downtown recording, right?
Yeah, love it.
But yeah, Lord of the Rings Trilogy Edition Risk is still on my top 3 games because of its impression upon me, both in strategic depth, and I love area control, and I love the competitiveness, but really also because of the like social encounters I got to have every time I got on the table. So
just so that you remember, not everyone listening to this podcast is at the uber level of gaming that you are, so you might have to define some terms if
absolutely,
you're going to get
like
into
area control.
into technical terms. All right. I'll go ahead and answer the question. For me, one of my favorite memories was actually when I was a grad student at Springfield, and I was part of the campus ministry at the local church there, and we went on a retreat and played Mafia, which, if you've never played, is this game that has a narrator, and you're kind of living out the game. So the Mafia has to vote off a person that dies in the night, and there's a cop that figures out who is in the Mafia, and there's a nurse that can heal or save save someone from a hit. And I just have so many fond memories from that. One of my friends had muscular dystrophy, and he's since passed away, but lived much longer than the doctors ever thought he would. And he was the best Mafia player ever, because he didn't move his body; he just would nod, and so we called him the Don.
Yes,
the Don. So the Don, because he would just kind of sit there in his wheelchair and just give you a nod.
Yeah, and you said, what does that mean?
And you could never hear him, and he was a pretty snarky guy, so you just never expected it to be him, and he was just really good at it. So
that's awesome.
I remember both those moments and him, because he's an amazing man, and just respect him so much, and he's with the Lord now.
Mafia, man, I've had plenty of good long. we made up new roles for Mafia to make it a bigger player count. Man, it gets wild. So fun. That's awesome.
One more time, if you will say, what is the topic for today?
Yeah, so the topic for today is transferable skills. I always have to put some sound effect, you know.
Well, I don't have any sound effects, so keep it up.
Yeah, there you go. I'll pull in my Dungeons and Dragons voices here. Everyone. I'm just kidding. I won't do that. I won't do that to you, audience. I won't do that to you.
Settle down, sorcerer.
That's right. I'll just stick to the horns, the air horn sounds.
If you've already turned off the podcast because we're too nerdy, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not sorry that we're nerdy. I'm just sorry that it wasn't okay.
Yeah, that's right. Come back. We promise we're actually going to talk about the topic.
Yeah. So this question came from someone that had listened to the podcast that was a friend of mine and said, you're using a lot of terms that I don't know. So what is transferable skills? So we're going to try to define that here. My definition for that is transferable skills are the knowledge, skills, expertise, and or behavior learned in one context and then applied to a different role or environment. I always want to get on my teacher brain there and repeat that, but you're listening to a podcast. So instead of me doing that, you just hit back if you need to hear it again.
Back 10 seconds. There it is.
I'm just thinking like I'm teaching in that mode. But
no, that's smart.
This was a concept that was introduced to me when I was in grad school. So as I mentioned on a previous episode, I went to grad school for athletic counseling, sports psychology, and this was a core component of our program there, where the faculty really pushed this idea that if you know how to do something in one place, you can apply that skill somewhere else. And we had to do field work for meeting with athletes and figuring out how to teach them life skills and counsel them and do performance enhancement. But they would credit field work that was related but wasn't exactly the same. And they just challenge you to think that way. So what are you doing where you could get skill and apply it?
Yeah. Oh, man, I love that.
You know, a good example of this would be preparing for an interview or your resume, where especially if you are applying for a job that you're not on paper quote unquote qualified for, but it doesn't mean that you can't do the work.
Right.
And so if you think I'm a good leader, I have good self-leadership, but I've never led a team before, can I be a manager? Well, yes, it has, sometime has to be your first job as a manager. So that idea of being able to say, I might not know how to do that or that in that context, or I've never done X before, but I've done Y and Z, and I can try that. And I think people sell themselves short sometimes, not realizing, oh, you actually have way more skills and knowledge and experience than you think you do.
Yeah, no, that's really good, man. I agree so much with the idea that skills are constantly Venn diagrams with other skills. And I heard someone once put it to me as like, experiences in your life are petals on flowers, and some flowers are in the same garden bed as other flowers. Some petals are on the same flower as another petal, and then sometimes your petals may be actually in a different garden bed, and that may be where you feel the least overlap. Like coding, some sort of script online may not quite be as easy to just instantly have the soft skill of walking someone through a counseling session. Those may be in different garden beds, but there's other elements of skills that are closely related. And I love that. I think that's true, and less of that expertise. This is in a column A, and you have column B skills. That's not column A, and I love the overlap there.
Jonathan, can you think of an example where this is played out? We'll get into your hobby.
Sure.
Either with yourself or some students that you've worked with.
I think that the example that comes to mind the most for me, and this may be almost a duh moment, but it's not when you're experiencing it. For me, the way that I have to parent children and the thoughts I have to have about their growth really identify for me what bad assumptions I might make about someone else's growth. Like when I talk about someone else, that's just anybody not me. And so when I engage my children, I learn a lot about assumptions I've made about their existence and their skills and their capacities and all of that. And I've seen so many times before where I would quickly go to challenge someone at a one level, but realize very quickly I might be assuming something about their abilities, capacities, skills, experiences that I don't know yet. So then it's this element of now I'm more curious before I get to the challenging point. And for me, as a challenger, I enjoy the challenge of people challenging me as well as challenging others for the sake of growth.
Is that Enneagram 8?
Enneagram 8, yeah.
Hey, we're the same.
Oh, there you go.
Nice.
We're the same. Me and Mark are exactly the same. There you go. No, yeah. And this element of like, I enjoy that element, but I jump to it with assumptions in mind and not realizing that I did. And then you can kind of hurt people because you're pushing them towards this growth that's not quite what they're actually needing to grow towards because you have some assumptions that you've made. So yeah, really, really loving the transferable skill of challenging people. And you would think a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old would not teach you much about a 22-year-old or a 20-year-old. But really, ultimately, when it comes to that assumption space, I found it very transferable.
Any fun stories of your little ones that are on this topic that you're like, oh, they did this and it made me think about my college students?
Yes, absolutely. My favorite space, my oldest son is really smart. He knows a lot of things.
And how old is he?
He's now 8.
8, okay.
And he enjoys knowledge, and he enjoys the gaining of knowledge. And that's awesome. I love fostering that, probably because his mom's really smart and does also love to gain knowledge.
His dad's pretty smart too.
Yeah, well, I do my best. I try to keep up, So I think it was cool because, yeah, he wants to know knowledge, but knowledge and skill aren't the same. And so one of these days, he knew so much about like rocks and rock climbing and stuff from mine and his conversation. And he was responding to me with words, all these words that at the time 6-year-olds should know. But we're out at Sandrock, and then I start watching him utilizing those words in an unhealthy way, as in, because I know about this, I can engage this. But all the safety parameters that relate to what I might have told him in story format were not available. And that was where I saw some students as well know words about God, about discipleship, about evangelism, but then basically be missing the skill of using them and what it looks like when you do that on a day-to-day, on a week-to-week, on a month-to-month basis with people. But discipleship's messy and can get tough and takes a lot of faithfulness and endurance, and you're going to be more confused than you've ever been in your life. And that whole space isn't there when you discuss it. And so just one of those transferable skills of watching knowledge versus actual experience play out, and then going, oh wait, what if my students have a ton of knowledge and I would expect them to have had experience to gain said knowledge, and instead they have knowledge and not the experience yet. So I need to help them move towards the experience of using that knowledge. Hey, Silas, you're right. This is an arete, which is a portion of rock that juts out, but you can't just climb an arete because there's nothing below it. It's like that moment is very scary, especially for me as dad.
That matters.
He's like, watch me climb the arete. I'm like, whoa.
That's hilarious. And if you don't live anywhere near us, Sandrock is a local climbing area that had 4 minutes of airtime in the Matthew McConaughey movie Failure to Launch. Terrible movie. The only reason I watched it was to see Sandrock, because they had closed down the entire summer, and we couldn't climb there at all while they were filming that.
For 4 seconds?
It was a few minutes.
Oh, man, that's so crazy.
It was just...
Obviously, that scene went really poorly over and over again. I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah, movies take time, but...
That's true. That's true.
But it's like, if they're going to shut it down, at least put it in a better movie.
Yeah, the settings don't get good movies just because they're good settings.
No.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. All right, so...
That's awesome.
Let's go ahead and move on to... I've referenced this several times, so I don't want to be obnoxious with that. So, Jonathan, you have a hobby, which I know we've chatted about before, that some days it feels like that's your real job, and working with college students is your hobby. But tell us about the world of game design and however you would define that world.
Yeah, so game design is truly one of the hardest...
Did I use the right term? Is it
game design?
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, truly, the subset that I dabble in the most is tabletop game design. So that's anything that you would put down on a table and physically play with another set of people. I would say that you are looking to design an experience that crafts the experience that your desired outcome is. The desired outcome of fun, which is impossible to define, because every single person has fun in a different way. Or maybe it's stress, or maybe it's progression.
Tell us a game that you absolutely love and where they've nailed the design.
Ooh, man.
And this doesn't mean that there's not other great games. Sure. I know asking him to pick one, even to use as an example, is a stretch.
Yes.
I've seen his game closet.
That's right. I love a game called Root, R-O-O-T. It's really truly a war game disguised in the fact that it's in a woodland set with little foxes and cats and birds and mice and moles. I love the thing it nails is I am incredibly special because the way I win, as in the way I get points, is unlike anyone else at the table. But we're all relating to the exact same board. And I'm not only thinking, how do I get points, but I need to think about how are you getting points? The main designer, Wehrle, is a history guru. And so he tapped into tons of his not only design experience, but also his history experience to craft a game like Root. But it's accessible in the sense that it's not France and Germany, and do you know enough about their tactics from World War I? It's... You're the foxes. This is what the foxes do. And so just really love seeing cool concepts like that.
As I learned when I asked Teddy in a previous episode about shoes, there's an entire world that I have no idea that exists. And I think that's some of the fun of doing the podcast.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Jumping worlds.
All right. And I guess practically, what do you do as a game designer? I don't mean what do game designers do. What do you do?
To use a strengths finder term, my number one theme, which I hope is a strength, is ideation.
Hey, that's mine too.
Oh, boom. See, we are the same. Guys, this is the Mark and Jonathan, or Mark and Mark podcast.
The Mark and Jonathan Share a Brain podcast.
Yeah, that's right. As a game designer, I take an idea and I make a tabletop game from that idea. So it doesn't exist usually when I think of it, or at least I don't think it does. It might exist in someone else's brain or maybe already be made. But I hope to take the idea of a fun experience that I think could be crafted on a table and make that product.
Okay.
And that's the elements of design.
Okay. How many games have you made, or what type of games?
I have made over 20 games.
Okay.
Many of them got made and got left, right? They didn't have what I thought they had. I have about 5 that I would say are pretty much in that I could pitch them to publishers, and I feel like they have a complete game set, rule set, components, and all of that.
And if you are a game publisher listening to the podcast, what's your Twitter handle?
J_Weaves, Weaves.
There you
go. Or you can look me up by Game Weaver. There's only like 2 or 3 people out there. Game Weaver Games. Yes, hit me up for sure. I have some games.
Free pub.
That's right.
How has game design influenced your day job? your hobby or your love of games, even playing or experiencing games, not just the design?
So I would say my hobby of game design works its way into the college ministry space in light of fun in college, especially at the particular college I am, which is very academically oriented, which is good for a college, but these students are working. I mean, they work hard. They need fun, and fun a lot of the times these days is actually more like a disconnect, or like I disconnect from people and veg out. That's the Netflix and chill world. Let's put a movie in, and that's really necessary for plenty of people. But the meaningful social interactions that come that a game can facilitate are not a standard form of everyday experiences for a lot of these students who are out studying their material, and they're consuming some of the like resources their teacher's giving. They're not trying to have fun. They're trying to do well. Now, I hope, and this would be something for you college students listening, I hope that fun and doing well go together. That's what this very podcast is probably helping you do. Find joy at work. But yes, I would say
Hope so.
Yeah, that's right. I think that game design has helped me think about what are the interactions that are going on at this table. What expectations do people have just by seeing something? Because if I put down something with 10-point text and it's got a lot of it, and there's like 2 icons, and then I tell you that there's 752 cards in this game, you have an expectation. Then when I put an Uno card deck down, you have a different expectation. Right? And that's really neat about game design. When I ask for feedback, I'm asking people to tell me what they really think. Not, hey, dude, you're great. This is so fun. Even though they're not having fun.
They give you that. Your game's not going anywhere.
Yeah, accurate. All the game designers out there are like, yeah, stop telling us we're good. No, yeah. I think there's an element of this that's like really cool, because when students hang out at my table, I'm wondering, what does this time mean to them? What are they looking for, but they don't even know they're looking for it? Right? I love playtesting for that very reason.
So a couple things I want to highlight that I heard as you were going. Some of the words you used reminded me of what we talk about with catalytic events, and one of those key components being memorable activities. And I'm hearing you describe these are the components of the memorable activities. So we're drilling in really deep into that idea, because everything that you're talking about is, that's all true in having something be memorable. I'm seeing human connection. I'm seeing fun, obviously. I'm seeing a lot of those components that we've already discussed on the podcast come out, because I think Jonathan's right. There is that Venn diagram overlap where there's there's so much.
Yeah, I agree. It's really cool too, because I didn't know that was true when I went into this hobby. I didn't go into game design going, oh, this will probably help my day job. I went into it because I had enjoyable experiences, and were like, I have a ton of ideas, and they're just kind of pestering me, and I have some free time. Maybe I should use it. Also, my kids, having 3 kids, I can do game design at night when they're sleeping, because all I need is paper. Paper and pencils and random bits,
Well, I remember when it was early on, we got connected over something. I think I was doing a training on the portable escape room that I'd helped develop.
Yep.
And Jonathan and I got to talking about game design and theory, and a lot of the experiences that I had made have the potential to translate into the tabletop board game version of things. And I've actually made some board game tabletop experiences that are less board games and more for team development. We'll do one more question on this episode before we pause and do part 2.
That sounds great.
All right. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a moment. What is the value or benefit in games and play? I'm going to pretend I hate it. It's awful. No one should play it.
I see that grimace mark.
No fun, sir.
No fun, sir.
I can't even get it out of my mouth
without laughing, right? Yeah, it's like you can't even do the villain.
We're going to pretend that, or I'm going to pretend that, I'm the business person who thinks fun is a huge waste of time and games are a huge waste of time and resources. Tell me why we're wrong.
Man, that is... obviously, if you were a big business guy, I'd have to approach this differently, but I'm going to approach it like your Mark. I think the expectation...
I'm a terrible devil's advocate.
That's right. If you were wearing a suit and looked like really serious, I might have to start in a different direction. I think that if you say that fun doesn't have use, or is not useful, or is not helpful in the workspace or at all, especially when it comes to like games, I think I argue that there's not a single person that I know that is not a game designer. And the reason I argue this, I know, I'm making big claims here. You were a child. That is all I have to say. Every child you engage takes the disparate things around them, crafts some form of experience that brings about pleasure for either themselves or the other kids around them. Right? There is an innate design perspective inside of a kid that says, I want to have fun doing blank. You know what we need to do blank? A trampoline. You know what we need to do blank? A piece of rope. Hey, do you have a Nerf gun? Hey, where's the ball? What are they saying? I want to craft an experience that is going to produce fun for me or for me and my friends.
But I'm a big corporate attorney, or I guess not a corporate attorney. I'm a something that says, but I'm an adult now. What about for adults?
That's a great question. If I'm saying that everyone has been a game designer and it's because they've been a kid, you learned the majority of the things you learned is as a child through play. There is an element of play that literally confirms and reconfirms lessons when you're a child. When I teach my son about random words in rock climbing, what does he want to do? He wants to rock climb, and he wants to pretend he's rock climbing, even on our walls and couches. And there is a space where imagination and literally crafting ideas for the sake of fun is a way to learn and enjoy the things that you're learning. And I think that this is not hard nowadays. I think there's so much psychological research around this that if there was that business CEO sitting in front of me, I would say, you could take me at my word in this and say, if you wanted to teach someone and you get to lecture at them, whatever you want them to learn for blank amount of time, versus do an experience that crafts an enjoyable or memorable moment around the same content, I guarantee you I'll have a higher % people know what's going on after the experience than after your lecture or than after the book that they read or something along those lines.
And books are good. We love leaders or readers. So
yeah, books are great. Lectures are awesome. The memorable moments when it comes to, if you're trying to talk about efficiency in games and play, it's to craft a memory. I always think of Inside Out, a core memory, a core memory about this subject because I codified it and I engaged it in an immersive way, not in a tertiary, I gave a few thoughts to it for a brief second as you said it kind of way. Even earlier, you're asking me to repeat the topic because our listeners want to hear the topic again so they can remember their topic. So like there's a space where I see games in play and I see people learning, and that's what's really cool about it.
All right, we're going to call it for part 1 of this conversation with Jonathan Weaver, the Game Weaver. Life is way too short for work to suck. So if you want help to build your team, train your team, or manage your team, we're here. Come see us at workplaysolutions.com. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Simplify it a little bit. When I say, what do you do? Like, I make board games. So
I do that.
Not everyone who's listening to the podcast has met either one of us. So help us with that foundation first.
That makes a lot of sense.
Sorry.
Yeah, so
I didn't clarify.